Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Randy of Snap Judgments, welcoming you to the show here on a Monday morning. So I had a little hiccup in the scheduling over the weekend. Unfortunately, my guest had appendicitis, had to go to the hospital and cancel last minute. Like I woke up to the cancellation. So juggled some things around, decided I was just going to do the last two Senior Bowl groups all in one episode here. And then tomorrow, we're going to jump right into the Super Bowl preview. We're going to spend the rest of the week talking about that mostly. I've got another guest coming in tomorrow. They're going to talk with me about the game, give me kind of an outsider's view. And they are not a Patriots fan. They're not a Seahawks fan either. They're actually a Cowboy fan. So we'll try not to hold that against him. And we will have a chat with him about the Super Bowl tomorrow. So, anyway, that's why this episode we've got the secondary and the group I was just calling everyone else because it was quarterbacks, running backs, and linebackers. They individually they were too small of groups to do separate episodes on, but together it was just a nice little catch-all bucket. So now these groups matter here for very different reasons, okay? And we're going to start with the defensive backs. Cornerbacks, more than anyone, must practice their art with perfection, okay? This is also a position that more than perhaps anywhere else, a baseline of athleticism matters. You simply cannot succeed if you're too slow, if you lack the quickness to hang with receivers, or you can't compete at the catch point. Once the baseline of athleticism has been established, what we're watching for is footwork, recovery speed, eye discipline. Corners, especially one on ones, matter more than game reps here. You can win or lose ground in a single rep. How do you look when you're stressed, when you're late? How do you react when you get beat? Additionally, corners aren't going to receive help from the game plan. It's just a one on one. A lot of times you see in games, corners are getting safety help over the top. Not here, not in a one on one rep. And safeties, now that we mention them, are all so different. Okay. Safeties show themselves in communication, in angles, in how fast they process what's happening in front of them. The splash plays are nice, but they're secondary. Now, compare that to quarterbacks, running backs, and linebackers. Those groups are evaluated less in one on ones and much more in context. For quarterbacks, it's command, timing, mental processing. Does the offense look calm or frantic with you in it? For running backs, it's vision, patience, pass game value. Anyone can run through a hole when it's perfectly blocked. Not everyone can survive the chaos. For linebackers, it's eyes, angles, and communication. How fast do you see it, and how cleanly do you fix problems? And throughout all of this, I'm watching through a Patriots lens. Versatility, trust, reliability, role clarity. Not raw testing and not hype. Can I put you on the field and trust you not to break the structure? That's the theme of this episode because this week isn't about box scores in the game. It's about whether you can focus and do your job. Now, we're going to start with corners. And when I'm evaluating corners at the Senior Bowl, the framework is simple. Can you hang with receivers? How do you react when you're beaten? And do you trust your technique or do you panic? When the ball's in the air, can you compete without grabbing? The flag thing is a real issue in these practices. Corners would rather get flagged than get beat on a highlight play. Me, I'm looking for guys who aren't afraid to get beat. Now, the first guy we're going to talk about, and we're going to start with Hezekiah Massis out of California. He is about 6 foot tall, 180 pounds, average height. He's a little thin, though. He's got decent length, but he's definitely not physically imposing. Now, what you like immediately is that he's played special teams. Coverage units matter, especially with rookies. That can be how you get on the field and earn defensive reps. It also tells you something about willingness and football character. On tape, he's good in both man and zone. He's not elite athletically, but he's good enough. The issue is press coverage. That's never been his strength. He's also got penalty concerns. 14 penalties over the last 2 seasons is a real number, and that matters when you're talking about NFL translation because NFL games aren't Senior Bowl practices. Flags matter just as much as getting beat. You give up yards and the first down. Production wise, he was excellent in 2025. 13 pass breakups, 5 interceptions, top ranked corner in the country statistically. But when you turn on the film, you see some stiffness in the hips, and where he really shines is in zone. He reads quarterbacks well, he anticipates breaks, and he understands route concepts. The problem with him is that the Senior Bowl buzz, it wasn't great. Most of the mentions around him were of receivers making plays over him, which is not how you want to be making the news. A lot of times the cornerback position is very much like a left tackle in that the less people are saying your name, the better. So that leads to the core question with Masses. Can he survive physically against NFL receivers without the game plan and defense helping him? Because if he can't play one-on-one man coverage in the NFL, the production won't matter, and the Patriots won't have any real use for a prospect like that. Now, Dalen Everett's the next guy we're going to talk about, and he is a very different evaluation. He comes out of Georgia, and physically, this is what teams are looking for. 6 foot, nearly 195 pounds, long arms, prototypical cornerback build. He's a big game player. He had an interception against Alabama in the conference championship and 2 pass breakups in the playoff against Ole Miss. He shows up when the lights are the brightest. He's physical at the line. He disrupts releases. In man coverage, he looks comfortable, confident, even assertive. Where he struggles is zone. His eyes wander. He can lose discipline, and there are real concerns in the run game. He's got a lot of missed tackles. Context matters here. He's a 5-star recruit with 4 years at Georgia and 55 games of SEC experience. That's serious experience. By 2024, he was a full-time starter, and in 2024, he put up 58 tackles with 3 interceptions. In 2025, 50 tackles and 1 pick. For him, speed is going to matter at the combine. He's got elite straight line speed on tape, and it translates vertically. So the question with Everett isn't talent, it's polish. Does he look like a finished product or a coachable one? Because if he's still learning, there's upside. If this is what he is, though, teams have to be honest about the limitations. I project Dalen Everett as, by the way, I didn't do this with the first guy either, but Hezekiah Massis and Dalen Everett. Hezekiah Massis probably end of day 2, early day 3, and Dalen Everett, I would say solidly on day 3. Colton Hood out of Tennessee is the next guy we're going to talk about, and he really is one of the trickier evaluations in this group with the Senior Bowl. Senior Bowl buzz around Colton was rough. Receivers were beating him early, and then he shut it down, which confused some evaluators that I spoke with. He's got an NFL bloodline. His uncle Roderick played 8 seasons in the league. Now, another red flag with him is that he has been at 3 schools in 3 years. He was at Auburn for a year, then he was at Colorado, where he played opposite Travis Hunter for a year, and then he went to Tennessee. Now, while he was at Colorado, he had 24 tackles, 2 interceptions, 6 pass breakups, including a 59-yard pick 6 against Kansas State. And when you got highlight plays like that, your name's going to start popping. He moved over to Tennessee in 2025, and the production jumped. 50 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, a pick 6, 8 pass breakups, and a fumble recovery. That's just production all across the board for a corner. Technically, he's sound. He's good in man and zone. He's a willing tackler, but could use work on the technique. His press footwork and hand placement are good. In zone, especially cover 2, he's very comfortable triggering downhill. Now, here's where it gets complicated. He's only played 29 college games and only 13 starts, and at 3 schools. He's barely 21 years old. He's got projected 4.4 speed and his second team All SEC selection this past year. So the question isn't really about athleticism or ability. It's simple. Is he coachable and does he want to be great enough? Because if the answer is yes, there's real developmental upside here. Colton Hood, I believe, is going to be solidly in the second day, probably round two would be my guess. Earlier on in the season, we saw him projected at times towards the back of round one. I think that's probably high at this point in the process for him, barring some jaw dropping performance at the combine. I would say he's solidly a round two prospect. Moving on to Malik Muhammad out of Texas, this might be the most interesting corner in this group. He's fluid. He plays like a blanket in both man and zone. He's excellent in pattern match concepts and reads quarterbacks as well. Now, he's a track athlete, literally. He did the triple jump, the long jump, and was a relay anchor. That shows up in his quick twitch explosiveness. He's played 41 games at Texas. Career tackles are solid, 97 with 3 interceptions and 16 pass breakups also. Now, some project him as slot only, but I think that undersells his skills. He's got legitimate outside ability. He can play nickel and even drop back to safety in certain packages. He communicates well pre snap. He's disciplined with his eyes. He's got day one special teams value. The concern is ball production. He's got a lot of pass breakups, but fewer interceptions than you would like. And there are minor technical concerns, a high waisted back pedal at times, and top end speed that might just be average. So here's the question: is he a slot only corner or can he play on the boundary? That will help dictate his value on draft day. Right now, Malik Muhammad, I would say, is solidly on day two. Um, Maybe, right outside the second round ish, maybe early third round, something like that. But I would be surprised if he was still on the board at the end of day two. Moving on to the safeties. All right. When it comes to safeties at the Super Bowl, this is where the evaluation gets quieter and a lot more revealing. Safeties aren't about highlights, they're about processing. How fast do you diagnose what the offense is trying to do? Not after the snap, before it. When there's motion, when the formation shifts, when the tight end moves. Do you adjust or do you wait for someone else to tell you what's happening? Communication matters more here than at almost any other position. I'm watching who's talking pre snap, who's pointing things out, who's passing routes off. Because at safety, if you're not communicating, you're guessing, and guessing gets people hurt. And really, it loses games. Angles are the other tell. You can be a great athlete and still be a bad safety if your angles are wrong. This is where you see whether a guy understands leverage, spacing, and pursuit, or whether he's just running fast and hoping it works out. And that's the converse of that, by the way, is also true. This is why you can be an average athlete and still be a pretty good safety. And then there's role flexibility. Can you play deep? Can you play in the box? Can you match a tight end or a running back without panicking? Because modern defenses don't want one thing from safeties. They want options. They want versatile chess pieces. That's you'll hear that all the time in the pre-draft process. He's a versatile chess piece. And really, that is what defensive coordinators are looking for, because you don't want to give away what you're doing just by the personnel on the field. If you see a player like Nick Emanwari, who was drafted in last year's second round, over in Seattle, he's doing incredible things, and that's because he is a safety in a linebacker's body who also rushes the passer and is great in man coverage and zone cut, and he just can do so many things that you can't tell what's going on when he's on the field. Seattle runs a lot out of their base defense, and it's because they have players like that who are just so multi that they can react to different formations but still keep the same base defense on the field. Um, so that's why this week matters so much for this group. You don't need splash plays to win reps here. You need to be right. You need to be in the right spot at the right time with the defense functioning because you're back there. So when we talk about safeties, I'm not asking, who looked flashy. I'm asking who made the defense feel stable. Zakee Wheatley is the first guy we're going to talk about from Penn State. Now, Zakee Wheatley has experience, 5 years, 58 games. His career production is strong, 223 tackles with 6 interceptions, multiple forced and recovered fumbles. He earned his starting role after an injury and never gave it back. Big game production, interceptions, and bowl games. He shows up when it matters. He's got projected 4.4 speed. He can play both safety spots. He's got good instincts, solid in run support, and he's capable in man coverage. The issues are consistency. Tackling can get sloppy. His angles are not always clean, and he needs to play with more physicality at the line. But in 2024, he put it all together. 96 tackles, 3 picks, forced turnovers, leadership. 2025 production fell off slightly. He had just 74 tackles and 1 pick. With Zakee Wheatley, the question is straightforward. Can he be the back end organizer who fixes mistakes? Because teams need that guy. Next, we're going to talk about Kamari Ramsey out of USC. Now, Kamari Ramsey is a technician. He started at UCLA, then transferred to USC. He was a 4-star recruit. He's got excellent eyes and zone coverage. One scout said his mirror technique in man borders on artistry. He's fluid. He triggers downhill quickly. He reads route combinations well. His tackling technique needs work, but when it's right, it's strong. His ball production doesn't match the talent. And that's really the one confusing thing about him, okay? Only 2 interceptions in college. So that's a part of the evaluation. Why doesn't, and we saw it too with the other guy earlier, why aren't you turning pass breakups into picks? As we saw, Malik Muhammad is who I was thinking of. But there is a little bit of concern there, and that's what you call ball skills. Does he have the skills to catch the ball? Very simple. Now, most of these guys, if they could really catch, right, the old adage, like if you could really catch, you'd be playing receiver. Okay, true to a point, but still, it's good to be able to get your hands on the ball and actually keep it. With Kamari Ramsey, the question is he a guy who can only play deep safety? And if so, can he make impact plays on the ball? Or does he have some positional versatility and can he contribute in run defense? These are questions that teams are going to need to answer for themselves about Ramsey. Ramsey is another guy, solid day 2 prospect, probably late second, early third round range, something in the 50 to 75 range. Bud Clark out of TCU is the next guy we're going to talk about. Clark is one of those safeties where the resume tells part of the story, but the context tells you the rest. He chose TCU over bigger name programs, and then he stayed 6 years in the same building. That matters because it shows up in how he plays. Comfortable, confident, and rarely surprised. This isn't a guy freelancing or guessing. He understands what the defense is trying to do and where he fits within it. The ball production jumps off the page. 15 interceptions over his college career. That's not luck. That's eye discipline, anticipation, and understanding quarterback tendencies. When you watch him in zone, he reads the passer well and positions himself to take away throwing lanes instead of just reacting late. He's also been around the ball as a tackler, over 200 career tackles, and he's got the tools to deal with tight ends in the passing game. Length, awareness, and enough physicality to compete at the catch point. Leadership matters here too. This is a 3-time team captain. He was a core special teams contributor. That tells you how coaches viewed him inside the building, not just on Saturdays. Now, the limitations are real with Bud Clark, okay? He needs to clean up his tackling technique. He can go a little too high, rely on contact instead of leverage, and that'll get exposed at the next level. He could also stand to add some functional weight. especially if he's going to live in the box or match up with bigger bodies in the NFL. Which brings us to the real evaluation question with Clark. It's not whether he can play football. He can. It's whether his game scales up to the NFL level. Does the anticipation still work when the quarterbacks are faster and better? Do the angles still hold when the athletes are quicker? Does the ball production translate when windows close faster? Because if it does, then you're looking at a day two safety who can play meaningful snaps early. And if it doesn't, you're looking at a really smart, reliable depth piece. And that's what this week was about for Bud Clark, answering whether the jump is manageable. Michael Taffy out of Texas is the last safety we're going to talk about today. Michael Taffy, he is one of those safeties where the value shows up before the ball is even snapped. This guy is a film junkie. In his 4 years at Texas, he's had 7 interceptions and 3 sacks. And when you watch him, what stands out is not the splash, it's the communication. He's constantly talking pre-snap, rotating coverages, and directing traffic. You can see him processing the offense in real time. In coverage, especially against tight ends and running backs, his technique is impressive. He's patient with his feet, he maintains leverage, and he doesn't panic when routes get physical. That's not something every college safety can do, and it translates. Now, athletically, he's average. He's not going to wow you with range or suddenness, and that does matter. Tackling is the other concern. He can lead with his helmet too often, and that's something that needs to get cleaned up fast at the next level. But there's real value here because players like Taffy make defenses function. They get people lined up, they handle adjustments, they allow coordinators to trust what they're calling. So the question with Taffy isn't whether he belongs in the league, it's whether he's a glue guy who makes everyone else better or a hidden starter who ends up playing more snaps than anyone expected. All right, now we're going to move on to the everyone else group, and we start that off by talking about 2 quarterbacks. Now, when people talk about quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, they usually talk about throws. Who spun it the best, who looked the smoothest, who made the highlight clip that travels around social media. But that's not really what this week is about, at least not for the teams that know what they're watching. This week is about a choice, a philosophical one, if you will, potential versus reliability. Because the 2 quarterbacks here that we're going to talk about could not represent those ends of the spectrum more clearly. On one side, you've got the athletic specimen, the rare body, the arm talent, the movement skills that don't need to be taught. The guy where you watch one rep and think, if this ever fully clicks, it's going to be special. And that's Talon Green out of Arkansas. He has the ceiling. He's all about projection. He's the long-term bet. He's a lottery ticket. On the other side, you've got the ready-made pro, not in terms of star power, but in terms of understanding. He knows where the ball is supposed to go. He knows why. He knows how to get the offense lined up and out of bad plays. That's Garrett Nussmeier. He's reliability. He's processing. He's the guy you trust to run what's on the sheet. And those 2 things almost never live in the same prospect. Green is an athletic outlier with a limited ability to read a full field right now. He wins with tools. He survives with talent. Development is the entire story. Nussmeier is the opposite. His ceiling is defined. What you see is close to what you'll get. But what you get is calm, fast processing, and a deep understanding of offensive concepts. He's the kind of quarterback who probably makes a better coach than star. Think Kellen Moore. He's the guy who can sit in a room, explain protections, and keep an offense functional. So when I'm evaluating quarterbacks this week, I'm not asking who threw the prettiest ball. I'm asking what kind of risk am I willing to take, or am I in the position or timeline to take? Am I betting on a future that might not ever arrive? Or am I betting on a floor I can live with right now? That's the lens for this section. And it's why these 2 quarterbacks are fascinating in completely opposite ways. Talon Green, first out of Arkansas, is all tools. This guy is 6'6", 230. He is a big time athlete. In 2025, he completed just 60.7% of his passes, though. He threw for 2,700 yards with 19 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. But on the ground, 777 rushing yards with 8 touchdowns, 35 rushing touchdowns in college all over. He hit nearly 23 miles per hour on Feldman's Freaks list, according to Feldman's Freaks list, rather. He can throw an absolutely gorgeous deep ball. We saw it in practice. He threw a 55 to 60-yard bomb to Malachi Fields. Now, the throw itself was pretty, and coming off, he's got a little bit of a slow delivery at times, especially like the longer the play goes, and the later the practices went, the colder it got. It seemed like the slower his delivery was, but when he does throw it, man, it was just a flick of the wrist practically for that 55-yard bomb. Now, it was, let's not say wildly off target, but it was off target enough to make it a pretty magnificent catch. Malachi Fields had to move a lot for it, track the ball deep, ended up laying out entirely, diving to get the ball. So it wasn't the greatest throw. But he's got that arm and he's got that deep ball. Again, the delivery, it's too long. Mechanics, they break down under pressure, and his accuracy comes and goes. He needs work on learning how to read the field. He's a project quarterback. So the question is the same as always. Does his athleticism complement structure, or is it enough for is his potential, like, is he ever going to reach his potential? Now, Garrett Nussmeier is the other side of that coin this year. Nussmeier, he entered the year as a potential first round pick. People even had him talking about top 5. Then LSU struggled. He struggled, and his draft stock absolutely cratered this year. Now he's been at the Senior Bowl, and he looks like the most pro-ready quarterback there. He's got great communication, good command of the offense. His throws look rejuvenated. He was the MVP of the game, and he had a rushing touchdown. Now, he's a coach's son he's a coach's son. He does an NFL coach's son. Doug Nussmeier is his father. He's the offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. Teammates love Garrett, and due to his, growing up around the professional game, he has an incredibly high level understanding of offenses, of what defenses are trying to do, especially for his age. He's a little small. He's a little on the small side. And his physical tools aren't like elite or eye popping or anything. So, you have with Garrett a high floor, somebody who probably projects as a career backup, but a high level backup, somebody, the type of backup that your starter can come over to the sidelines and the backup actually helps figure out what went wrong with that earlier play. Now, the backup's not going to step in and take the starting job anytime soon, but, if the starter were to go down for a game or two, the backup could probably handle running the offense and not completely crash and burn. So that is the sort of player Garrett Nussmeier projects at. Again, think Kellen Moore. This is a guy who's probably going to be an NFL coach at some level in 10 years. It's much more likely that he'll be an NFL coach of some sort in 10 years than a Pro Bowler in 10 years. But in the meanwhile, he could be a very reliable and backup who actually actively contributes on the sideline to your team. So that's something that teams could be interested in. And as a Patriots fan, I could honestly be interested in either one of these guys, depending on where you have to take them. The Patriots have 4 6th-round picks. There's a number of things that I'd be looking at in that 6th round in terms of developmental prospects. And if someone like Talon Green was still on the board then, or even Garrett Nussmeier, I would definitely think about using one of those picks on a guy like that. Again, for entirely different reasons. Look, Talon Green, you put him on the practice squad, and just there's so much potential there. It's going to take time, 2-3 years. You bring him in for some preseason games. You know, God forbid something happens to Drake May or whatever, but Drake May, if Drake May gets injured at some point in time or needs to sit out a game or two, or maybe we're, just kind of cruising down the last week, and Green comes in then, and then you develop some value and trade him for some kind of asset down the road. Or Nussmeier, on the other hand, where you get the same career backup. He, kind of studies Drake May, the offense, and kind of acts as another quarterback's coach, both preparing for his next career and, actively contributing as part of his current career. So anyway, moving on to running backs. At the running backs position, I'm going to talk about two college teammates. Now, these were guys who some people thought could be RB2 and 3 in this class last summer. The way the season unfolded, however, these guys are now hoping to be a day 2 selection, and they might not even be that. Kaytron Allen's the first, 5'11", 230 pounds, out of Penn State. Now, in 2025, he really carried Penn State. He had just about 1,300 rushing yards, 15 touchdowns, and was averaging over 6 yards per carry. He's a good pass blocker. He shows patience in the run game with elite vision and good burst through the line. Now, he's not a burner. He doesn't have the great speed or any of that, and he needs to work on his game as a receiver. He just hasn't had a lot of targets. He projects as a power back in a committee, but, he could be more to some. Is he a grinder, or is he a dependable every down option? And I think the answer for us as the Patriots, and this is a kid that I really like, I could see targeting maybe with one of the 2 4th-round picks. I think that he would make an excellent power back opposite Travion Henderson. Even with Ramondre Stevenson on the roster, look, we are not good in short yardage and goal line situations. We haven't been all year. There have been times where we've played well enough to win. But a little bowling ball like Kaytron Allen really helps that. Okay. Now, popping right over to his college teammate, Nicholas Singleton. Now, Singleton's year fell apart. Okay. He was not good. He averaged, I want to say 4 yards per carry. I had it written down. But yeah, about 4.2 yards per carry. He did have 13 touchdowns, but that's only 549 yards. His production really kind of fell off a cliff in 2025. When he's healthy and focused, though, this kid is talented. He's got reported 4.39 speed, documented 23.6 miles per hour. He's an angry runner with excellent contact balance. He's also strong as hell. He broke Saquon Barkley's squat record. He's got special teams experience. He's good in pass protection. And the question is, does he care? Does he want to be a great NFL running back? Because the kid's got all the tools if he does. He has fallen from early in the season being a late first, early second round projection to he'll probably go somewhere on day 3. I suppose, he's not going to be undrafted, but probably 5th, 6th round, something like that, middle of day 3. It's really fallen off a cliff, his draft stock. Moving on to linebackers. Linebackers lose value when they hesitate. To translate this for a Patriots fan, do your job. Can you run the defense the way it's drawn? Can you be in the right gap when the front shifts? Can you carry the route when the coverage rotates? Because New England doesn't need a linebacker who makes 3 splash plays and gives up 5 explosives. They need the guy who's always where he's supposed to be. So at the Senior Bowl, I'm watching the boring stuff. I've been watching the eyes, the angles, and the communication. Do you ID motion? Do you pass off routes? Do you take on blocks with leverage instead of just trying to slip around them? This week tells you who's ready to be reliable and who's still playing on athletic autopilot. Now, Bryce Betcher is the first guy we're going to talk about. Bryce is one of those prospects where the story is very interesting and it matters. Not because it's cute, but because it explains how he plays. He came to Oregon as a baseball player. He played center field, three sport athlete in high school. He was a walk on when he joined the football program. He wasn't supposed to be here. And that background shows up immediately when you watch him because he plays linebacker like someone who had to learn the position instead of growing up as the biggest athlete on the field. In 2024, the production was real: 94 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, and an interception. That's not accidental. That's someone who sees the ball and goes to it. He plays downhill. He's decisive and he doesn't drift. When he commits, he commits. Now, he doesn't have elite speed. That's the first thing you notice. He's not running people down from bad leverage, and he's not going to win a lot of foot races to the edge. As a pass rusher, he's limited. This isn't a guy you're scheming pressures around. And my first thought, by the way, was he was playing center field. You'd think his speed would be a little bit better. Quickness is where he's at. He was a career shortstop, and he actually was drafted by the Houston Astros in the 12th round of the 2024 MLB draft. But he decided to go back to Oregon for another year. So interesting player. Moving along, we're going to talk about Kyle Lewis out of Pittsburgh. Now, this guy is a football player, okay? I don't mean that as a compliment or an insult. I just mean it literally. He shows up early. He lives in the film room. He lines up all over the field. And somehow, no matter where he's aligned, he finds the football and gets involved in the play. The production jumps out immediately. He had 6 interceptions, 10 sacks over 2 seasons as a starter. That doesn't happen by accident, especially at linebacker. That's awareness, timing, and understanding how offenses want to attack you. When you watch him, he plays fast. He trusts what he sees and he goes. He'll trigger downhill. He'll jump passing lanes. He'll show up in moments that matter. There's a clutch gene there. Big plays in big situations. But the concerns are real too. He's undersized for the position at the NFL level, and it shows up when he has to take on blocks. He can get pushed around. If he doesn't win early with leverage, the play can wash past him. He's not a thumper, and he's not going to anchor against power. So the projection question becomes about translation, not talent. Does his speed show up where it matters? Because if his quickness and instincts allow him to beat blocks, close windows, and stay on schedule, he can carve out a role. If not, teams are going to struggle figuring out how to keep him clean enough to be effective. And this is one of those players that you'll sometimes hear the title or the term tweener. And for some players, tweener is a compliment. For some players, what it means is you can play multiple positions. For other players, tweener can be a bit of a criticism. And for those players, it can be you don't play any positions, right? It's a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing, I guess. And it becomes a question of that with players like Kyle Lewis. Are you jack of all trades? Do you play many positions or do you play none? Because if you can't do one, at the end of the day, the NFL, as much as they want multi-players on the defense, you also have to do something very, very well. It's also, to a certain extent, a league about specialization. And so if you don't have something you do incredibly well, it doesn't matter if you can do everything average, because you're going to get beat at everything it is you do. So just by average players. The next guy that we're going to talk about is Jacob Rodriguez. The best word to use to describe his game is chaos. Turnovers everywhere. He's a turnover machine. 6 interceptions, 13 forced fumbles, 5 recoveries. When you turn on the tape, it's not that the ball finds him. He finds the ball, and he is the peanut punching master, okay? He's just the expert at popping the ball out there from ball carriers. Analytically, the grading absolutely loved him. PFF had him at a 93, I believe it was a 93.4 actually, overall grade, which is damn near impossible for a linebacker to get. Okay. They're just, I mean, Trevor Sickma went on and on about it on one of his shows, but there are just so many opportunities to get nicked. You have to be on top of so many different things: coverage, run stopping, what's going on with the defense. You're probably setting up the defense in a large way. Um, there are just so many, it's such a vast amount of responsibilities and places that you can get knocked as a linebacker that it's damn near impossible to get a 93 grade. And yet he did. Um, now, this tells you how consistently impactful he was snap to snap. He's around the football all the time. Now, he's not a great athlete. Okay, let's get that out of the way. Average speed, average burst, and he's also got below average size. Um, Now, in coverage, especially against quick slot receivers, he has issues. And if he has to flip his hips and run, not ideal. But he's incredibly instinctive. And he's another one of those guys, like we talked about with Kyle Lewis, who's just a good football player. He sees plays developing early. He understands leverage. And because he played quarterback in high school and even started on offense at Virginia in his first year of college, he understands what offenses are trying to do. That's why he's so disruptive. He anticipates, he undercuts routes, he attacks the ball instead of just making the tackle. So the evaluation question with Rodriguez is about usage. Is he an early down specialist who thrives in traffic against the run and in condensed spaces? Or is he a full package linebacker who can stay on the field when offenses spread you out and force coverage matchups? Because if you ask him to be something he's not, you'll see the limitations very quickly. But if you let him play fast, downhill, and instinctive, you're getting a defender who changes possessions, and that matters. Now, Jacob Rodriguez, probably a late day 2, early day 3 type of pick. But I do think that this is one of those players that in a year or two, he's going to be in Pro Bowls, maybe an All Pro, just a wildly impactful linebacker where you look back and you go, how the hell did he fall that far in the draft? Um, the guy I think about when I think about that sort of thing is Brian Branch. Brian Branch to me was so obviously a top 10 player in that draft class. And I couldn't stop talking about it pre draft. And then he ended up falling to the second round. I was just downright puzzled. Um, and as his career has continued on, I mean, it hasn't helped clear it up. The guy has been absolutely ridiculously good since he walked into the NFL. And it was just, again, it was so obvious. Jacob Rodriguez is like that. He's just so good at football. I don't know how all 32 teams are going to pass on him 2 or 3 times each. Um, but yeah, we'll see what the draft brings. I actually know one analyst who has him ranked, I think, 10th in the class. So we'll see. All it takes is one GM to love you. In closing, when you look back at these groups, especially the defensive backs, what really separated guys wasn't speed or ball production, it was how they handled being stressed. You could see which corners were playing way too physical because they were afraid of getting beat, grabbing at the top of routes, panicking when they lost leverage, trying to survive the rep instead of play it. And that shows up fast here because officials aren't letting you hide. The corners who impressed me were the ones who played straight up. They took losses on the chin, fixed them, and lined back up without changing who they were. Better footwork, better eyes, better discipline. That's the kind of response that translates. And that same theme carried through the rest of the positions. Quarterbacks showed you who could control an offense when things weren't perfect. Running backs showed you who could be trusted in protection and in space. Linebackers showed you who could see it, communicate it, and act without hesitation. This week doesn't create stars, it clarifies roles. Comfort shows up immediately, processing shows up immediately, and trust matters more than a flash. That's the Senior Bowl. And that's a wrap on the Senior Bowl series. Tune in tomorrow to start previewing the Super Bowl with myself and my guest, Ben Holloway. He has a sports podcast called, I think it's called Death, Taxes, and Sports. I think he's doing an episode tonight at some point in time. So, look that up, check it out tonight. Tune in tomorrow. You'll hear us both talk about the Super Bowl extensively. I'm actually really excited for the Super Bowl preview. I've got a lot of good stuff that I've been looking into, looking for, searching, kind of bits and pieces and um, tips and so forth from some of the best, minds around the league, around coverage of the league. Everything that I could find to try and bring it in and give you guys the best preview of what we might expect to happen. Um, as Patriots fans, what we might hope the Patriots can exploit or turn this game into, how we hope they can win. Um, so I'm very excited to talk about that with you guys. Another side note, the Senior Bowl itself happened on Saturday at 2:30. I was hoping to have this whole series wrapped up before Saturday. Obviously, that did not happen. Um, and so yeah, here we are today on Monday doing the last two groups after the Senior Bowl already finished. I believe the American team won. It was 17-14. Garrett Nussmeier, as I mentioned earlier, was the MVP of the game. He did score a running touchdown during the game. The quarterbacks all kind of struggled. It was a defensive game, and the American team was up at one point in time 17-0. They kind of like just barely held on to keep the win. So anyway, again, we're done with the Senior Bowl right now. The rest of this week here on Snap Judgments will be spent talking about the game. That is the Super Bowl on Sunday. Our home team is in it again. We're going to preview that game for the rest of the week. Next week after the game, we'll spend at least maybe Monday and Tuesday reviewing the game, and then we're going to dive right into the off season. We're going to talk about free agents. We're going to talk about guys who we might be letting go, and then we're going to talk about draft prospects because, again, we have 11 picks in this draft. I know we're all excited about the Super Bowl, but the draft is still upcoming. The offseason is still upcoming, and we've still got a whole other year next year that we're going to need to be prepared for. So I promise you that a good portion of the Patriots personnel staffing, they were at the Senior Bowl. I know there was a good sized group of them there. And a lot of them, the scouts, etc., are preparing for the offseason. We're going to start doing that. We're going to hit the ground running right after the Super Bowl. The rest of this week on Super Bowl, early next week review, and then boom, we hit the ground running for the offseason. You guys, folks listening to this, are going to be the most well-prepared Patriots fans when you sit around talking with your friends and family, talking about who might fit this team and why. There's going to be nobody more well-informed than the folks who tune in and subscribe to Snap Judgments and listen to this every morning. Hit like, please, down below. I think it's in that general vicinity. Subscribe, and, because you don't want to miss any of this. I will see you tomorrow morning with our guest to talk the Super Bowl. Have a great day, guys.